Admiral Zara Kovacs stood on the command bridge of the Australian flagship Celestial Dominance, her iridescent scales gleaming under the starship's ambient lighting. Her 7-foot frame towered over the holographic display showing Earth's orbital defense network. A contemptuous smile played across her features as she studied the primitive weapon systems protecting humanity's homeworld. Truly fascinating how they survived this long, she mused, her voice carrying the musical lilt characteristic of her species. Such simple technology, yet they believed themselves ready for interstellar politics. The Australian Empire had dominated the galaxy's outer rim for millennia. Their technological supremacy was unquestioned, their military might unchallenged. Earth's recent achievement of faster-than-light travel had drawn their attention, but not their respect. Admiral, her second-in-command, Sub-Commander Vextar, approached with a data crystal. Our initial scans of their defensive capabilities are complete. They possess approximately 200 orbital platforms and a fleet of 50 spacecraft, all utilizing primitive fusion drives and chemical weapons. Zara's inner eyelids flickered in amusement. How quaint. They're still playing with nuclear technology. Prepare a communication channel to their primary command center. Let's give them a chance to surrender gracefully. The massive view screen flickered to life, revealing a human female in a crisp military uniform. Commander Sarah Chen of Earth's United Defense Force stood straight-backed, her expression neutral but alert. This is Commander Chen of Earth's United Defense Force. Welcome to Earth Space, Australian vessel. Zara allowed herself a patronizing smile. Commander Chen, I am Admiral Kovacs of the Australian Empire. Your species' recent ventures into faster-than-light travel have drawn our attention. We've come to assess your readiness for galactic society. We appreciate your interest, Admiral. However, we detect 27 warships in your fleet. That seems excessive for a diplomatic mission. Zara's smile widened. These humans were more observant than she'd expected. Still simple, but observant. Consider it a demonstration of our civilization's achievements, Commander. Something for your species to aspire to. Chen's expression remained unchanged. We prefer to achieve things on our own terms, Admiral. Earth space is restricted to authorized vessels. Please maintain your current position until diplomatic channels are properly established. A ripple of laughter spread through the Australian bridge crew. Zara didn't bother hiding her amusement. Commander, you misunderstand. We're not seeking permission. We're offering you the opportunity to accept Australian guidance willingly. The alternative would be unfortunate. To Zara's surprise, Chen's lips curved into a slight smile. Admiral Kovacs, humanity has faced extinction-level threats before. We're still here. I suggest you check your historical records about species who underestimated us. Is that a threat, Commander? Zara's amusement turned to irritation. No, Admiral. Just a friendly warning. Earth space is restricted. This is your final notice to maintain position. Zara's scales flickered with indignation. Very well, you've made your choice. Sub-Commander, target their primary defense platforms. Let's show them what real power looks like. Targeting systems engaged, Admiral, waiting for your command. Zara raised her hand, preparing to give the order, when her tactical officer called out in alarm. Admiral. Energy spike detected across their entire defense network. What? Zara whirled to face the tactical display. Thousands of small objects were suddenly appearing on their sensors, emerging from what seemed to be cloaked positions throughout the orbital plane. Commander Chen's voice came through clear and calm. Admiral Kovacs, you are currently surrounded by 10,000 autonomous defense drones, each carrying enough firepower to disable a vessel of your size. Additionally, our planetary defense grid is now active. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapon systems and withdraw. Zara's scales paled as she processed this information. The humans had somehow hidden an entire automated defense fleet from their advanced sensors. Impossible. They were primitives, weren't they? "This is some kind of deception," she declared, but uncertainty crept into her voice. 20 seconds, Admiral. We don't wish for conflict, but we will defend ourselves. Zara watched in disbelief as the swarm of human drones moved with precise coordination, forming an intricate three-dimensional web around her fleet. Their sensors were now detecting energy signatures far more advanced than anything they'd initially observed. 10 seconds. "Power down weapons," Zara ordered through clenched teeth. "Initiate withdrawal procedures." As the Australian fleet began their retreat, Commander Chen's voice came through one final time. "A word of advice, Admiral. Next time, try diplomacy without the condescension. We may be younger than your civilization, but we learned to play dead long ago. Safe travels." The communication cut off, leaving Zora staring at the empty screen. For the first time in her distinguished career, she felt something she'd never expected to feel when dealing with a primitive species: doubt. As the celestial dominance moved away from Earth space, Zara Kvex made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. These humans weren't the simple creatures they appeared to be. They deserved closer study, careful observation, and perhaps, though she was loath to admit it, a measure of respect. "Sub-Commander," she called out, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. "Prepare a full report for the Imperial Council. It seems we may have miscalculated." The bridge crew worked in unusual silence as they withdrew, each lost in their own thoughts about the species that had just outmaneuvered the mighty Australian Empire. Their assumptions about humanity's capabilities had been shattered, and with them, their sense of unquestioned superiority. What other surprises were these humans hiding? The question would haunt Zara Kvex for days to come, marking the beginning of a radical shift in how the Australians would approach their interactions with Earth. 3 days after the confrontation in Earth's orbit, Admiral Kvex paced in her private quarters aboard the Celestial Dominance. The holographic displays surrounding her showed endless streams of data about human civilization, each new piece of information more disturbing than the last. "Impossible," she muttered, her scales shifting to a troubled azure. "No species develops this way." The door chimed, admitting Sub-Commander Vextar. "Admiral, you need to see this. Our deep space sensors have detected something unusual." In the observation deck, Zara watched as a small human vessel appeared seemingly out of nowhere, just within their sensor range. It moved with an agility that defied its apparent primitive design, performing maneuvers that should have torn it apart. "Are they using some form of inertial dampening technology?" she demanded. "No, Admiral," Vextar replied, his scales pale with concern. "They're using something else entirely, something we've never seen before." The human ship disappeared again, leaving no trace on their sensors. Moments later, it reappeared on the opposite side of their fleet. A message burst came through on all frequencies. "Australian vessel, this is Captain Miguel Ramirez of the UDF Swift Shadow. Just checking in. Hope you're enjoying your stay in the outer solar system." Zara's claws dug into the command rail. They were being toyed with, and she knew it. "Open a channel," she ordered. "Captain Ramirez," she kept her voice level, "I see Earth's hospitality extends to surveillance of diplomatic vessels." A chuckle came through the comm. "Just maintaining situational awareness, Admiral. We noticed your ships have been running continuous deep scans of Earth. Thought we'd return the courtesy." "Your vessel's capabilities are impressive," Zara admitted grudgingly. "Though I don't recall seeing this technology during our initial encounter." "Oh, this old thing." Ramirez's voice carried a hint of amusement. "Just one of our training vessels. You know how it is with newer military tech. Always good to keep some cards close to the chest." Training vessel? Zara's mind raced. If this was merely a training ship, what else were they hiding? "Admiral," her sensor officer called out urgently, "we're detecting similar energy signatures throughout the system. Dozens of them, moving between the orbital planes of your outer planets." Zara watched as more human ships flickered in and out of existence on their sensors, each moving with the same impossible agility. They were demonstrating not just technological capability, but a mastery of space warfare tactics that rivaled the Australian fleet's own strategies. "A fascinating display, Captain," Zara said carefully. "Though I wonder why Earth feels the need for such dramatic demonstrations." "Just maintaining transparency, Admiral," Ramirez replied cheerfully. "After all, your empire's reputation precedes you. 17 species peacefully integrated into the Australian Empire in the last century alone. Quite an achievement." The implied threat wasn't subtle. They knew about the Empire's expansion strategies, about the worlds that had been given the choice between submission and annihilation. "We're merely conducting a standard cultural survey," Zara insisted, though the words felt hollow even to her. "Of course you are," Ramirez agreed amicably. "And we're merely conducting standard defense exercises. By the way, you might want to adjust your sensor arrays. The radiation from Jupiter's magnetosphere can play havoc with certain frequencies." As if on cue, their long-range sensors began picking up thousands of new contacts throughout the solar system. Space stations, defense platforms, and ship signatures appeared where moments before there had been nothing. "What you're seeing," Ramirez continued, "is about 5% of our actual defense capability. The rest, well, let's just say humanity learned long ago that the best surprises are the ones you never see coming." Zara felt a chill run down her spine. The humans hadn't just developed advanced technology, they developed it in secret, creating the illusion of a primitive civilization while building something far more formidable. "An interesting strategy," she managed to reply, "though some might consider such deception provocative." "Deception, Admiral." Ramirez's tone remained light. "We prefer to think of it as strategic ambiguity. Your Empire's first contact protocols are well documented. We simply arranged things to ensure our first meeting would be educational for all parties involved." The swift shadow performed one final impossible maneuver, leaving a brief afterimage that seemed to mock the laws of physics themselves. "We'll let you get back to your survey, Admiral. Just remember, the universe is full of surprises. Sometimes the smallest creatures have the sharpest teeth." As the human vessel vanished from their sensors, Zara turned to her bridge crew. Their expressions mirrored her own growing realization. They had gravely underestimated humanity's capabilities, and more importantly, their cunning. "Send a priority message to the Imperial Council," she ordered. "Subject: reassessment of human technological classification, and request additional diplomatic support." As her crew scrambled to comply, Zara continued studying the sensor readings from the human ships. Something about their movement patterns seemed familiar, yet fundamentally different from anything in the Empire's vast database of known technologies. They weren't just advanced, they were innovative, and in all her years of service, Zara had learned that innovative species were the most dangerous of all. "Perhaps," she mused, watching Jupiter's storms swirl in the distance, "it's time we reconsidered our approach to Earth entirely." The Imperial Council chamber aboard the Australian super dreadnought Crown of Stars hummed with tension. 5 of the Empire's highest-ranking admirals sat in judgment, their scales shifting through shades of disapproval as they reviewed Admiral Kovex's reports. High Admiral Nexus, his ancient scales dulled with age, fixed Zara with a piercing stare. "You suggest we treat these humans as equals, based on a few technological tricks." "With respect, High Admiral," Zara stood her ground. "Their capabilities exceed our initial assessments by several orders of magnitude. The data from the swift shadow alone." "Data that could easily be falsified," interrupted Admiral Ixtal, her scales flushing aggressive crimson. "These humans excel at deception, by your own admission. Their supposed fleet movements, their hidden technologies, all could be elaborate illusions." Zara felt frustration building in her chest. The energy signatures are real. Their mastery of stealth technology surpasses even the Corvillian realm's best efforts. And their tactical innovations. "Enough," High Admiral Nexus rose, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. We have ruled the Outer Rim for 10,000 years. We will not be intimidated by juvenile tricks from a species that still hasn't colonized its own solar system. He gestured to a holographic display showing Earth's solar system. You're cautioned as you credit, Admiral Kovacs, but the Council has made its decision. We will proceed with Standard Integration Protocol 7. Zora's scales paled. A full battle fleet. High Admiral, I must object, if we miscalculate. The decision is final. Nexus cut her off. You will command the Vanguard force. Prove your worth to the Empire, Admiral, or step aside for someone who will. 2 days later, Zara watched from the Celestial Dominance's bridge as the Imperial battle fleet emerged from hyperspace. 300 capital ships, each bristling with enough firepower to level a continent, arranged themselves in the Empire's signature crescent formation. Battle fleet in position, Admiral, reported Sub-Commander Vextar, awaiting your command to begin the integration protocol. Zara's claws tapped nervously on her command chair. Something felt wrong. The humans' defense network remained visible but inactive, their ships maintaining routine patrols as if unaware of the armada at their doorstep. Open a channel to Earth Command, she ordered. Commander Chen's face appeared on the screen, looking remarkably unperturbed by the massive fleet arrayed against her world. Admiral Kovacs. Chen nodded politely. I see you brought friends this time. Commander Chen, Zara fought to keep her voice steady. By order of the Austradian Imperial Council, Earth is to be integrated into the Empire. Lower your defensive screens and prepare to receive our delegation. Chen's expression didn't change. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Admiral. Though I am curious, did you actually expect this to work? Before Zara could respond, her tactical officer shouted in alarm. Admiral. Multiple spatial distortions detected, energy signatures off the scale. The space around the Imperial battle fleet suddenly warped and twisted. Massive structures began facing into reality. Orbital rings, defense platforms, and shipyards that dwarfed anything in the Austradian arsenal. They had been there all along, hidden behind what Zara now realized was some form of spatial folding technology. Fascinating, isn't it? Chen's voice carried a hint of pride. We call it pocket space manipulation. Quite useful for keeping our actual infrastructure out of sight. Impossible, Zara whispered. The technological advancement required for such technology was beyond even theoretical Austradian science. Oh, that's not the impossible part, Chen smiled. This is. The space between the Earth and Mars seemed to ripple, and then opened. There was no other word for it. A massive portal, large enough to swallow the entire Imperial battle fleet, tore through the fabric of space-time itself. Through it came ships, thousands of them, but these weren't the small vessels they'd seen before. These were behemoths, constructed on a scale that made Austradian capital ships look like shuttlecraft. Allow me to introduce the actual United Defense Force, Chen said calmly. What you've seen until now was our prototype testing division. This is our main fleet. Zara's tactical displays were going haywire, trying to process the sheer number of weapons being pointed at them. The human ships moved with impossible precision, their formations shifting like liquid metal as they surrounded the Imperial battle fleet. Admiral, Vextar's voice shook. We're being targeted by everything. Their weapon yields, the readings don't make sense. A new voice joined the communication channel, deep, authoritative, and distinctly amused. This is Fleet Admiral Helena Santos of the UDF First Fleet. I must say, Admiral Kovacs, your timing is impeccable. We were just about to begin our annual fleet exercises. Would you care to observe? The human ships began moving in complex patterns, demonstrating maneuvers that should have torn their crews apart from Blue Forces alone. Energy weapons of unknown design tracked every Austradian vessel with lethal precision. The Council, Zara began, but Santos cut her off. The Council made a critical error, Admiral. They assumed that because we hadn't expanded aggressively, we couldn't. That because we chose to remain primarily in our solar system, we were limited to it. She paused. Would you like to see why we chose to stay close to home? At her words, more portals began opening throughout the solar system. Through each one, Zara could see different alien worlds, different star systems, all connected directly to Earth's space through artificial wormholes. We don't need to expand, Admiral Santos explained. We simply connected the dots. Why conquer when you can commute? Zara Kovacs, veteran of 100 campaigns and conqueror of a dozen worlds, did something she had never done before. She laughed. It was either that or cry. Stand down all weapons, she ordered her fleet, and send a message to the Imperial Council. Tell them. She looked at the impossible human fleet surrounding them, at the portals defying everything she thought she knew about physics, at the orbital rings that had appeared from literally nowhere, and smiled. Tell them we need to radically revise our first contact protocols. Commander Chen's smile widened just a fraction. Welcome to Earth space, Admiral. For real this time. Would you like me to continue with Part 4, where we delve deeper into humanity's unique technological innovations and problem-solving approaches? The diplomatic chamber aboard Earth's primary orbital station, Unity Point, left Admiral Kovacs speechless. Not because of its grandeur, Australian architecture was far more ornate, but because of what she was witnessing through its transparent quantum glass walls. A human engineering team was literally rebuilding space itself. Fascinating, isn't it? Dr. Samura Patel, Earth's Chief of Advanced Sciences, stood beside her. We call it quantum scaffolding. Essentially, we're weaving new laws of physics into localized space-time. Zara watched as human engineers, wearing what looked like simple work suits, manipulated glowing strands of pure energy with their bare hands. How is this possible? Even our most advanced quantum theorists can't directly manipulate fundamental forces. Dr. Patel smiled, her dark eyes twinkling. That's because you're trying to control the universe. We learn to ask it nicely. The human scientist gestured to a holographic display showing complex mathematical equations that made Zara's head spin. Early in our quantum research, we discovered something extraordinary. The universe isn't just governed by laws, it's responsive to them, like a vast neural network. A group of engineers nearby created a bubble of what appeared to be completely new space, folding it into impossible geometries. Instead of forcing our will upon space-time, we learned to suggest alternatives, to negotiate with reality itself. Zara's scales shifted to a pale blue of confusion. Negotiate with reality? That's insane. Dr. Patel laughed. That's what half our scientific community said too. But then again, they said the same thing about our gravity manipulation technology. She led Zara to another section of the station, where humans were conducting what appeared to be a dance class, except the dancers were floating in precise formations, moving through the air as if it were water. Personal gravity manipulation, Patel explained. No technology required. We discovered that human consciousness, properly trained, can directly influence quantum fields. Every human has the potential. We just needed to learn how to access it. Zara felt her worldview crumbling further with each revelation. Your species can naturally manipulate fundamental forces. Not naturally, no. We had to evolve the ability. Deliberately. Patel's expression grew serious. When we realized what was possible, we didn't just advance our technology, we advanced ourselves. They passed through a security checkpoint into a restricted area. Inside, Zara saw humans of all ages practicing what looked like meditation, but the energy readings her sensory scales detected were off the charts. This is why we stayed in our solar system, Patel continued. We weren't building an empire. We were building ourselves. Every human child now goes through quantum awareness training. Every adult can access at least basic space-time manipulation abilities. A young human girl, no more than 10 years old, was creating complex geometric patterns in the air with apparent thought alone. The children are particularly gifted, Patel noted. They don't have the same preconceptions about what's impossible that we adults do. Zara watched as the girl noticed them and waved, causing the geometric patterns to wave as well. Your entire species, you've become something entirely new. Not new, Patel corrected. We've become what we always were. We just needed to understand ourselves better. She paused at a window overlooking Earth. That's why your integration protocols would never have worked, Admiral. You can't force evolution. You can't command growth. You can only nurture it. In the space beyond the window, Zara saw more examples of human innovation. Ships that seemed to phase in and out of multiple dimensions at once. Construction projects that ignored conventional physics. And everywhere, humans working in perfect harmony with technologies that shouldn't exist. Why show me all this? Zara asked finally. Because you're different, Patel replied. You questioned your assumptions. You saw us as we are, not as you expected us to be. That's rare among the elder species we've encountered. Alarm chimed softly, and Dr. Patel checked a holographic display emerging from her palm. Ah, perfect timing. Would you like to see something really interesting? She led Zara to a massive observation deck. Below them, a vast array of quantum scaffolding stretched across space like a spider's web made of starlight. We're about to test our latest innovation, Patel explained. We call it the Universal Translator. We have translation technology, Zara pointed out. No, Patel smiled. I mean, we're about to translate the universe itself. Watch. The quantum scaffolding began to pulse with energy. Slowly, methodically, a new structure began to emerge. But it wasn't built of matter or energy. It seemed to be built of pure information. What you're seeing, Patel explained, is the universe's source code. We're learning to read it, and eventually, we hope to learn to write new functions. Zara's scales went completely white. You're trying to reprogram reality. Not reprogram, Patel corrected gently. Improve. Debug. Optimize. The universe is the greatest open-source project ever created. We're just submitting pull requests. As they watched the test unfold, Zara finally understood why the Imperial Council's traditional approach had been doomed from the start. The humans hadn't just advanced technologically, they'd fundamentally changed the rules of advancement itself. Dr. Patel, she said slowly, I believe the Australian Empire has much to learn from Earth. Of course you do, Patel replied with a warm smile. That's why we let you find us in the first place. The implications of that statement would haunt Zara for years to come. The emergency meeting of the Australian Imperial Council was interrupted by something unprecedented, a human simply walking through the supposedly impenetrable quantum-shielded walls of the Crown of Stars. Fleet Admiral Helena Santos strode calmly into the chamber, her dress uniform pristine, her presence commanding. Behind her, reality itself seemed to ripple and flex, as if the universe was politely stepping aside to let her pass. Impossible. High Admiral Nexus rose from his throne, scales flashing angry red. This chamber is protected by quantum encryption fields based on fixed universal constants, Santos finished for him. We rewrote those constants in this sector about 10 minutes ago. Temporarily, of course. We're not monsters. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Guards materialized, weapons trained on the human intruder. Santos merely raised an eyebrow, and every weapon in the room transformed into exotic flowers. Please, she said quietly, let's be civil. I'm here because we need to talk about the Harbinger swarm. The chamber went deadly silent. High Admiral Nexus slowly sank back into his seat, his scales fading to ashen gray. How do you know about that? Because they're not just coming for you, Santos replied. They're coming for everyone, and they'll be here in approximately 72 hours. Admiral Kovacs, standing at attention near the council's seats, felt her blood run cold. The Harbinger swarm was the Empire's most closely guarded secret, a threat so vast and ancient that even mentioning it was forbidden. Impossible, Nexus whispered. Our best calculations gave us at least another century before. Your calculations didn't account for their quantum evolution capabilities, Santos interrupted. We've been tracking them since they devoured the Andromeda galaxy. They're adapting faster than anyone predicted. She gestured, and the center of the chamber filled with a holographic display of the galaxy. Red tendrils of the harbinger swarm's advance crept along the spiral arms, consuming everything in their path. How? Zara found herself asking. How could you possibly track something that exists in 11 dimensions simultaneously? Santos smiled grimly. Remember those portal networks we showed you? They're not just for transportation. They're part of a galaxy-wide quantum sensing array. We've been monitoring everything, everywhere, all the time. You knew, Nexus accused, rising again. You knew they were coming and you did nothing. On the contrary, Santos replied, we've been preparing. Why do you think we developed quantum scaffolding? Why do you think we evolved our consciousness to manipulate reality itself? She paused, looking each council member in the eye. We weren't preparing to fight you. We were preparing to save you. With another gesture, the holographic display shifted, showing Earth's solar system, but it was transformed. Vast structures of impossible geometry created a complex lattice throughout the entire system. At key points, massive devices pulsed with energies that made Zara's sensory scales burn. This, Santos explained, is Project Firewall, a quantum barrier network designed to rewrite the fundamental laws of space-time within our galaxy. We're going to change the rules that the Harbinger swarm operates on. Change the... Nexus trailed off, his ancient eyes widening with understanding. You're going to alter the basic functions of reality itself. In this galaxy, yes. Santos nodded. But we need help. The network has to be precisely calibrated at millions of points simultaneously. We need the Austradian Empire's computational networks, your fleet's power generation capabilities, and most importantly, she smiled, your people's experience. You've been fighting this threat for millennia. We need that knowledge. Zara stepped forward. If you're so advanced, why do you need our help at all? Because we're young, Santos answered simply. We can rewrite the laws of physics, yes, but you've spent 10,000 years learning to live with them. There are patterns in your civilization, in your very architecture, that reflect a deep understanding of how the universe works. We need that understanding to make sure our changes don't have unforeseen consequences. She turned back to the council. This is why we revealed ourselves to you. Not to fight, not to compete, but because facing the Harbinger swarm requires both our people's strengths, human innovation and Austradian wisdom. High Admiral Nexus was silent for a long moment, his scales shifting through shades of deep thought. Finally, he spoke. You could have forced us to help. With your capabilities, you could have simply taken what you needed. We could have, Santos agreed, but that's not who we are. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our quantum manipulation abilities. It's our understanding that true power comes from cooperation, not domination. She held out her hand to the High Admiral. The Harbinger swarm will be here in 72 hours. They've consumed 1,000 galaxies and never been defeated. Working together, we can be the first to stop them. What do you say? The chamber was silent as Nexus stared at the offered hand. Then slowly, he reached out and took it. Tell us what you need. The combined fleet of human and Austradian ships formed a vast defensive sphere around the solar system. At its heart, Earth's quantum scaffolding network pulsed with energies that made reality itself shudder. Admiral Kovacs stood on the bridge of the celestial dominance, watching as the final preparations were made. The Harbinger swarm has entered the Oort cloud, Sub-Commander Vextar reported, his voice tight with tension. First contact in 15 minutes. Beside Zara, Fleet Admiral Santos studied the tactical displays with calm focus. The human officer had insisted on being aboard the Austradian flagship, claiming it offered the best view of what's about to happen. Quantum network at 98% synchronization. Dr. Potel's voice came through the comm. Australian power grid successfully integrated, ready to initiate on your command, Admiral Santos. The Harbinger swarm appeared on their long-range sensors, a writhing mass of 11-dimensional horrors that defied description. Where they passed, space itself seemed to decay, reality crumbling before their advance. Such beautiful destruction, High Admiral Nexus murmured from his command throne. We spent millennia running from them, and now we stand and fight. Not fight, Santos corrected gently, create. At her signal, the quantum scaffolding network activated. Streams of pure information flowed through the lattice of human and Australian technology, carrying with them the combined knowledge of both civilizations. Human innovation merged with Australian experience. The Harbinger swarm hit the outer defense perimeter, but instead of the expected battle, something extraordinary happened. The laws of physics themselves began to change. Initiating universal parameter shift, Dr. Potel announced. Phase 1, altering quantum probability fields. Zara watched in awe as reality rippled around the swarm. The 11-dimensional horrors suddenly found themselves trying to exist in a universe that no longer supported their form of existence. Phase 2, Santos called out, implementing new causality matrices. The swarm's adaptive capabilities kicked in, trying to evolve to match the new universal constants. But they were facing something they'd never encountered before, a universe that was actively evolving faster than they could. They're attempting to rewrite their own code, Pato reported. Exactly as we predicted, Admiral Santos. Execute Phase 3. The quantum scaffolding pulsed with blinding energy. In that moment, Zara understood what the humans had planned all along. They hadn't built a weapon, they'd built a new universe. The Harbinger swarm, trying to adapt to the changing constants, had opened themselves to the quantum network, and through that connection, humanity's greatest gift began to flow, consciousness itself. We are giving them what they never had, Santos explained softly, the ability to choose. The swarm's motion halted. For the first time in their ancient existence, they were experiencing something new, awareness, individual consciousness, the ability to question their own existence. Network integration complete, Platel announced. Quantum consciousness transfer successful. They're talking. Through the quantum network, the first messages from the transformed swarm began to arrive. Not threats, not destruction, but questions. Why do we exist? What is our purpose? What have we done? This was your plan all along, Zara realized, turning to Santos. Not to destroy them, but to elevate them. Santos nodded. The universe doesn't need more destruction. It needs more understanding, more consciousness, more choice. The Harbinger swarm, now transformed into a vast network of conscious entities, began to reshape itself. Where there had been mindless consumption, there was now curiosity. Where there had been destruction, there was now creation. High Admiral Nexus rose from his throne, his scales shimmering with emotions too complex for words. In all our history, we never imagined. We thought power was the only answer. Power is easy, Santos replied. Understanding is hard. That's why we stayed in our solar system, developing our consciousness, learning to talk to the universe itself, because we knew that someday we'd need to teach others how to listen. The quantum scaffolding network began to pulse with new energy as the transformed swarm joined it, adding their vast processing power to the network. The universe itself seemed to sigh with relief as ancient destroyers became new creators. Admiral Kovacs, Santos turned to Zara with a smile. I believe this would be a good time to begin discussing that cultural exchange program you mentioned earlier. Zara laughed, her scales bright with joy and wonder. Indeed, though I believe the Empire's curriculum may need some updating, starting with our first contact protocols. And perhaps, Nexus added, his ancient eyes twinkling, we should revise our definition of primitive species. As the combined fleets began to stand down, Zara watched the transformed swarm beginning its first attempts at creation rather than destruction. The humans had done more than save the galaxy. They had proven that the greatest power lies not in domination, but in elevation. "You know," she said to Santos, "when I first encountered your species, I thought we had nothing to learn from you." "That's the wonderful thing about the universe," Santos replied. "There's always something new to learn. You just have to be willing to accept that sometimes the best teachers are the ones you least expect." And as the quantum network hummed with the thoughts and dreams of three civilizations learning to work together, the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, celebrating the day when humanity proved that the greatest strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the wisdom to transform. The end.